how can mindfulness meditation help you stay healthy, especially in the light of this new coronavirus that we have going around the world right now? That'll be the subject of today's video. I'm Doug Smith of the Online Dharma Institute, that's onlinedharma.org. If you're new to this channel and interested in living a wiser and a kinder and a calmer life, consider subscribing to the channel. So wisdom, kindness, and calm, that's going to be really the heart of today's video. And what we're going to be doing is looking at an article today by Jenny Gross in the New York Times, which is about strategies that we can use to help us stay healthy by helping us to stop touching our face. As many of us will know, touching your face is one of the main vectors that we become infected by viruses. We get them on our hands by touching objects in the environment, and then we go ahead and touch our faces, and the virus enters through our nose, eyes, or mouth. That's one of the normal ways that we get infected. And Jenny Gross mentions 4 tricks that she says that we should use in order to stop ourselves from touching our face. And we'll go through these 4 tricks today, and I think you're going to find that they're all related in one way or another to mindfulness, and in particular mindfulness meditation, actually. Her first trick is, she says, to keep a box of tissue handy, and I happen to have one right behind me. I don't have a whole lot of people right around here. I'm off in the relative woods here, so I don't have to worry about it quite as much as I would if I were in the city, but still I have this box here. And the idea is, as some of you may know, the reason to have this with you, especially if you're out in a group, is because if you have an itch or something on your face, then you can touch it with this Kleenex, because that way you're not going to get anything that was on your hands onto your face, because the tissue paper is liable to be clean. So that's the first kind of strategy that we might be able to use. And by the way, I'll have a link to this article of Jenny Gross down in the information box below the video in case you want to read what she has to say. It's certainly a worthwhile article. Her second strategy that we can use is, she says, to identify the triggers that tend to make you want to touch your face. So for example, if we find that we tend to have dry eyes, and so we're regularly rubbing our eyes during the day, we might bring with us, let's say, some solution that we can drip in our eyes to keep them hydrated. Or we might say, if you normally have something that is rubbing on your face during the day, perhaps your glasses are not quite straight or something, we can find ways to perhaps deal with those triggers beforehand, or in a more mindful way, so that we aren't normally touching our face, we're not getting our material from our hands onto our face and potentially infecting ourselves. Her third trick is, she says, to keep your hands busy. So if you have a pencil or a pen or a ball that you can squeeze in your hand or something like that, that may take some of the nervous energy out of your body, out of your hands in particular. We tend to touch our face or touch things in the environment just out of nervous energy. It's a sort of a normal kind of thing that we do without even thinking about it. And so having something that we can take that energy out of ourselves with, some object in the environment that perhaps we can get our hands working with, can help. Or even sometimes in some situations, putting on gloves may be helpful, because that will remind us, the touch on our face, if it were to happen, would startle us a bit because it feels a little different. Or she suggests perhaps putting some scented lotion on our hands that smells different than what we normally would wear, or might normally put on our hands, so that just as a kind of a trigger for ourselves to remind ourselves that we're not supposed to touch our face. And certainly when it comes to keeping your hands busy, it's something that I do, you'll notice on these videos, tend to move my hands around a bit. That's sort of how I talk. It annoys some people. I'm sorry if it annoys you, but that's just how I am. And as a result, I can see that this is certainly something that I can myself learn from. And indeed, all of these first 3, she has 4, I'll get to the 4th in a minute, but all of these first 3 of her pieces of advice to us about not touching our face are examples of, in one way or another, mindfulness of the body. Now, if we know mindfulness meditation, there are four different sort of ways we can approach mindfulness meditation, and the first of these, traditionally, is mindfulness of the body. That is to say, four things we can be mindful of, aspects of our mind and other things, but the body is really important when it comes to remaining healthy in this way. So we want to be mindful, the Buddha tells us actually, mindful of the position of our bodies, what it is we're doing. Mindfulness of whether we're sitting or whether we're standing or walking. Whatever it is we're doing, mindfulness meditation, mindfulness practice tells us to be aware of that. If you like, I think to slow down a bit. And I think ordinarily in daily life, we're on a kind of autopilot where our mind is trying to do various things at the same time. And so what we're ending up doing is focusing on whatever it is that happens to be interesting to us at the time or important, and letting everything else work on autopilot, work on sort of the parts of our brain that are less conscious to us. I mean, this is normal, and I certainly do this myself. All of us do. But what ends up happening here is that the parts that we're doing on autopilot, we may be behaving less skillfully than we could otherwise. And that usually doesn't make any particular difference. However, when it comes to something as important as remaining healthy in the face of a potential pandemic like a coronavirus, all of a sudden it becomes the sort of thing that we really want to pay attention to. Now, to be clear, it's not just about coronavirus. I mean, this is the kind of thing that can keep us healthy from regular colds, from the flu, from whatever happens to be floating around in the environment. There's lots of things floating around out there. So it's not something that we should say, oh, we only have to worry about it now, and then next year we can forget all of this. No, it's important all the time. And I should also stress this is hard. This is not the kind of thing that we should think of as something that you can be told once and you can be expected to remember and put into work perfectly from the first time. There's a very kind of a funny video that's been making the rounds. I believe it's from the Washington Post, and I take a look at it. Take a look at a section from it right now.
Start working on not touching your face, because one main way viruses spread is when you touch your own mouth, nose, or eyes. And of course, enhance cleaning of surfaces.
It is very funny, of course, and really the video makes clear that even people who are knowledgeable and deal with this material all the time and certainly know it by heart aren't necessarily going to practice it when push comes to shove. And in particular, when you're in an environment that is somewhat stressful, that is to say, in front of the public, giving a talk, having to answer questions. And indeed, this video goes on. I'll put a link to it down below in the show notes. I've just taken a section out of it, but there are a number of other examples in the video where people are answering questions in press conferences. And of course, I mean, they end up doing things that they themselves say you shouldn't do because their brain is once again actively thinking of how to respond to questions and so on. And as a result, their body goes back onto autopilot. Again, this is hard, and we have to be careful not to be too judgmental. I mean, of course, these things are funny, and they should, I think, take us down a peg from feeling like we're going to get it all right. But the point is not to be judgmental of ourselves or others, because we're going to all make these mistakes. I certainly would make exactly the same mistakes if I were in the same situation. I don't think I'm any better than these poor guys up in front of the cameras. And the fourth piece of advice that Jenny Gross gives us is to chill out, to relax a bit, which may seem like strange advice when it comes to remaining healthy in the face of these kinds of viral infections that are going around. But she cites a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Northwestern who says that he's worried about the effects of using ritualistic behaviors, like, say, snapping a rubber band on your wrist each time you touch your face. He says, it's more effective to try to be in the present moment, practicing meditation and mindfulness exercises and focusing on your breathing. And the reason for this, he says, is that stress impacts the immune system. So as we've seen, mindfulness of the body is extremely important when it comes to paying attention to what we're doing with our body, and in particular with our hands, trying to give our hands other things to do, let's say, trying to be aware of the triggers that may cause us to touch our face, having things that we can put in our hands, such as tissues, Kleenex, whatever it might be, gloves, some scented lotion, which can help enable our ability to be more mindful when it comes to our hands. But there's also this separate issue, which is really getting into the heart, or more of the heart, I should say, of mindfulness practice, which is calming ourselves down, reducing stress. Chilling out like this is definitely one of the answers for us, but it's not the only thing that we should think about when it comes to mindfulness meditation. As we've just seen, mindfulness is really also about situational awareness, about being aware of what we're doing and being aware of whether it is appropriate in a given situation. And this also has to do with protecting others, because being compassionate for others is really also part and parcel of a mindfulness practice, of mindfulness meditation. Being aware of those times when we may be doing things that are going to harm other people. For example, if we're going to cough, one of the standard pieces of advice is not to just cough out into the world, but to cough in here into your elbow, because that's going to protect the cough from going farther out, and it's not getting whatever you're coughing onto your hands, which makes it more likely for you to distribute it onto the environment. Now, these are also things that we can say we can take from a mindfulness practice, which makes us calm down and slow down enough to become more aware of things. If we're stressed out, if we're not calm, we're more all we have to do is consider the video. If we're stressed out, we're more likely to do things that are on autopilot, that we're not intending to do. Another example, which makes me think of Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh had this wonderful passage in his book on mindfulness about mindfully washing the dishes, that we wash the dishes simply to wash the dishes, not to get them clean. We invest ourselves completely in the washing. And in the same way, when we're washing our hands, people say that the proper way to wash your hands is to wash them for 20 seconds, which is really a long time. They say recite happy birthday to yourself twice over, or something like that. A mnemonic that gets you to sit there or stand there for 20 seconds washing your hands. And this is another thing, another way we can be mindful. Wash your hands in order to wash your hands, and not to worry about getting it over so quickly so you can go on and do something else. That's perfect advice from the meditation master Thich Nhat Hanh, we might say. But I think on all of this, the issue is not that we're going to expect to get it at 100%, because none of this is going to be done at 100%. We're going to make mistakes. I myself make mistakes. I've thought about this now for many days and catch myself making mistakes all the time. But the point is that if we can get better, if we can get a little bit better day by day, then we're at least making an advance. We're helping things out. We're helping ourselves by making it less likely we're going to get infected by whatever the illness is going around. We're going to make things better for others by not spreading it to them, and so on. All of these are ways in which mindfulness meditation and mindfulness practice can make the world a better place. And if you don't know much about mindfulness or want to learn more, check out my video on a beginner's guide to mindfulness practice. I'll put a link to it up here on the screen. Thanks so much for watching. All of you be healthy and well, and I'll catch you on the next one of these videos.